I started traveling with the cruise ships around the Caribbean, that I started like slowly fading away from Jesus. And that slowly started to hurt my faith. One night, I couldn't take it anymore because I would wake up in the middle of the night like I was having a heart attack or something. And I grabbed the Bible underneath the bed and I opened it because I was desperate. I needed help. So I called the home of Mother Therese in Tijuana, Mexico, and I was a volunteer there for 2 years. And in those 2 years, God healed all my wounds. And that's when I really found Jesus. My name is Andrea Vicich. I'm a singer and songwriter and founder of Angels of Charity Music, which is an organization that helps underprivileged kids that need to undergo surgery, and we provide free surgery. So I'm a missionary for the poor and the sick as well. And I was born in Peru. I come from an Italian mother and a Yugoslavian father. And I was raised Catholic at a private Catholic school with nuns from the United States. And my mother is Italian Catholic and my father was Orthodox Slavic. And I was very blessed to be raised at a Catholic school and to be able to grow in the faith of Jesus and Mother Mary. Even though my parents were not very devout, we would go to church from time to time, special occasions, but they were very nice parents and loving to place me in a private Catholic school. At age 12, my father brought a wonderful piano, a German piano from like the I think it was late 1800s, early 1900s. He got it at an antique store. And my mom said, "What is this piano doing here? Nobody here plays the piano," because everybody at home is an athlete in my family. And my father was a national champion in 3 disciplines. And my dad said, "Well, it doesn't matter. It was a great, opportunity. It was on sale. Somebody might play it." And then I said, me, I would like to play it because I was always close to music since I was little. So I started playing the piano by ear, and then my father hired a piano teacher, and Mr. Rodolfo Contrinari from Argentina. He was my teacher. At age 18, I got my first job as a singer for a TV show in Peru. It was a very famous show, and that brought me into getting to know new things about the entertainment business. And I was still close to Jesus at that time, at that age, thank God. But it was until I turned 21, I was hired by Carnival Cruise Lines to be a lead singer on the cruise ship. We went all over the Caribbean, and that really hurt, I think, started slowly to hurt my faith, and I started falling away from Jesus and Mother Mary, and I started getting more into being vain about the ways I look and about finding fame. But I had a broken heart, and I thought that fame will really bring happiness into my life. I thought that the glory of life was there, to be applauded by an audience, to be famous. But I really had a broken heart as a child, and it was not healed then. It was healed later on when I went back to Jesus. At age 24, I moved to Hollywood, California, and I started working there first as a songwriter for a famous producer in Hollywood. I was writing songs for them, and then I was singing, doing television, radio, film, and working for different record labels as a songwriter and doing live shows, and then some opening acts for famous Spanish artists. And that really brought me very far away from Jesus. That's when I stopped completely going to church and my relationship with Jesus. I stopped my relationship with Jesus. Not Jesus with me, I did. At age 30, I hired a musician for my band who happened to be Christian, but I didn't know. And then one day he brought a Bible for me, and I took it home and I thought, what a strange gift he's given me, a Bible. But then I thought, well, this is something holy, and I'm not going to, throw it away or anything like that. I said, this is holy. I'm going to put it under my bed, and I placed it under my bed. And a few days later, I had to go to the Billboard Awards. I have landed this opportunity to be an opening act for famous artists for Billboard. And I thought this is the greatest opportunity of my life, because there are going to be many scouters and record labels trying to find an artist there. And yes, I performed there, and I was approached by Angie Perez Allende. She was at that time a scouter for this label, and she offered me a contract to go to Mexico City and sign for this label. And she said, when can you come? And I said, well, I'll go next month and we'll review the contract. After I said that, I went back home, and then I started having for almost the whole month, the same nightmare every single night. This was a terrible nightmare. And in the nightmare, I would come to this big mansion, beautiful mansion, very luxurious and full of jewelry, so pretty. And when the door opened and I went in, suddenly it was not a mansion anymore. It was something terrible, horrible. Everything was torn apart, burned. I remember there was a burned tree and everything broken. And then the devil will come in front of me and say, now, finally, you're truly going to serve me. Bend on your knees, because now you're going to serve me. And I remember in this nightmare, I would say, no, I'm not going to go with you. It was so scary. I'm not going to go with you. No way. He's like, if you don't bend on your knees in front of me right now, I will stab this arrow into your heart. So in the nightmare, I said, I don't care. I belong to Jesus. And I said the name Jesus, Jesus. And the devil was pointing the arrow, right? Throwing the arrow towards my heart. In that moment, the heart of Jesus appeared in front of my heart and the arrow, and will stop the arrow from stabbing me. And every night, I had the same nightmare. And then I thought, I'm going crazy. Why am I having this nightmare? So one night, I couldn't take it anymore, because I would wake up in the middle of the night like I was having, a heart attack or something. And I grabbed the Bible underneath the bed and I opened it because I was desperate. I needed help. And it opened in the book of Daniel. And I remember I said, I'll read whatever, I'll read anything from this Bible. And it opened in the book of Daniel, who was a prophet. And it was a story of King Nebuchadnezzar. I was in shock because this king had a dream, and Daniel was able to interpret the dream. And so I thought, this is very strange. Why am I having this nightmare, and also this king who was doing wrong things, in his life? And I thought, there's something I'm doing wrong, or maybe I'm dying. And that would be my last days, So I thought I was going to die. Then I thought, no, maybe it's not that. Maybe the plane is going to fall. And so I canceled my flight to Mexico 3 times. By the 3rd time, I got on the plane, and it was December 12, 2006. December 12 is the day of the Virgin of Guadalupe, this huge festivity in Mexico and many countries around the world. But I didn't know it was the festivity of Mother Mary in Mexico. But God has its own ways to make everything happen. So I landed in Mexico City, and my friend Gerardo, who was an actor for a big station over there at that time, he picked me up, and he's a close friend of mine, and he said, "Are you okay? You don't look good." And I said, "No, I don't feel good. I don't feel okay. I don't feel good." He said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Well, don't think I'm crazy, but I think I need a psychologist or someone that is spiritual to help me, because I've been having this nightmare with the devil every night." And he's like, "Well, you picked the worst day to ask for advice," he said, "because it's the festivity of the Virgin of Guadalupe." I said, "The festivity of the Virgin of what?" He said, "You don't know what festivity this is?" I said, "No, I have no clue." He's like, "Oh, well," he explained to me, and he said, "It's very hard to find someone, but my cousin, who is a priest, I think it's his day off today. Let's call him." And so he called his cousin, and his cousin said, "Bring Andrea immediately." We went to Father Nacho's home in Mexico City. And then I walk in. He's such a nice priest. And I told him my nightmare. And I said, "This is horrible. I think I'm going to die very soon." And he stood up and said, "Glory be to Jesus. This nightmare doesn't mean that." He said, "This nightmare means this: the glory that you've been looking for. You're not going to find it in the things of the world. The glory you've been looking for all your life, you're going to find it in Jesus Christ, serving Jesus." And that message for me in that moment felt like it was Jesus Christ himself speaking to me through this priest. And he opened his drawer and took out my albums. And I said, "Oh, how come you have my albums?" And he said, "My cousin Gerardo gave them to me." And he said, "I've been praying for you for about 6 months. Every night I pray for you, and I pray the rosary, and I ask God for your life. And I'm so happy that I have met you. God has brought you to me here." And I was in shock. I could not believe such a miracle. This man that I didn't know had prayed for me. My friend gave him my CDs with no intention, just to say, "This is my friend Andrea, this is her music." Of course, it was not religious music, it was popular music. And I said, "Well, now I'm confused, Father Nacho. I have an appointment at this label. So should I cancel it? What do? I don't know what to do. I've been wishing for this contract all my life. I've worked for this since I was very young." And he said, No. Nobody can change the plans that God has for you. You go to the record label. Go. So I went to the record label. Unbelievable. I go in and I meet with Angie. And Angie is sitting there, and it was a business meeting. She took out the contract. We're reviewing things. And then she says, "I think I'm doing something wrong." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I think I'm going to be like a big stone in the plans that God has for you in your life." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" She's like, "I'm sorry I say this, but I think I'm doing wrong. I went to a spiritual retreat, and I had an encounter with Jesus Christ," she said, "and I am quitting this label. Next month, I will not be here. And I have to tell you this, because you seem like a really nice person," she said, "and this business is a tough business. I will not be here to protect you," she said. "I don't know who is going to take my position. And for 5 years," she said, "you're going to be like a clown, like a puppet for 5 years, For 5 years, you're going to have to do what they say, talk, speak what they say, do what they're telling you to do, dress as they say. You might not get to sing the songs that you want, you might have to sing songs that you do not like. And she said, another things that that happens in this industry. And I said, yes, I know. And she said, have you ever thought about singing for the Lord? And I said, oh my God, I said, this is unbelievable. I just came from speaking to a priest. And then I told her about my dream and everything. And we had such a beautiful conversation. We were together for like 4 hours talking about God and following a spiritual life. And she said, don't sign the contract, take it with you and think about it, pray over it. And well, I never signed it. That's why I'm here today. I never signed the contract, but Angie and I became very good friends for many, many years. We've been friends up to today. And she was a big support for me when I was diagnosed with cancer. I was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago, so I'm on remission. So it's considered in cancer a recent remission, and she was a big support as a friend. So God gave me a friend too. After Angie gave me the contract, I took it with me. As I said, I didn't sign it, and I went back to Los Angeles, went back to Hollywood. I would get phone calls from people, hey, come here to model or do this or do that, work on this, whatever. And it was very hard for me, because that was a way for me to make a living. So what I did was I went back to teaching, and I started teaching music at a school. And so that helped me to bring some income into my life and trying to be away from the worldly things. And then I started making phone calls and calling different ministries, organizations, churches to ask them if they wanted someone in their team. But I didn't qualify for anybody because my resume was all, very artistic, and I didn't qualify for the church. I decided, well, I'll try my last chance. I'm going to call the home of St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta because I always admire her work since I was very young. And I've always been very close to helping others and charity and things like that. So I called the home of Mother Teresa in Tijuana, Mexico, and it was the only number that I found online at that time. And Mother Lourdes was the one that answered the phone, and she said, yeah, sure, come over. She didn't ask me any questions. She didn't ask me for any religious studies, nothing. She said, come, the nuns are here waiting for you, and the children are waiting for you. And that's how I started going to Tijuana, and I was a volunteer there for 2 years. And in those 2 years, God healed all my wounds. I would go to the home and sing for the children, help prepare meals, etc., whatever help was needed. And that's when I really found Jesus. The healing of Jesus and happiness and feeling really truly loved by the Lord and by the nuns and by the children. And after 2 years, Mother Lourdes said, you are ready now to go out, back to the world and do ministry, she said. But I wanted to become a nun. So I said, Sister Lourdes, I would like to become a nun. And she said, sure. I want to ask you one question. Would you be willing not to see your family for 10 years? And I immediately said, no. She said that your calling is to go back to the world, she said, and bring Jesus to the youth, to the children is very needed right now. She said, you haven't been singing for 2 years, and you should maybe write music for the Lord and sing, for the Lord outside in the world. And then she prophesied to me that I was going to be working with kids that needed medical care, a lot of them. And it's true, I've been working with a lot of children that sadly are sick, but we managed to bring free surgeries to those underprivileged children. And so it's been a wonderful walk with the Lord. I want to be like that sick leper that thanked the Lord for healing him, and I am that because I've been healed spiritually, emotionally, and physically. I've been healed from cancer, but most important, I've been healed emotionally and spiritually. That's the most important healing that we can experience in our lives. Jesus has ways to call us, and we all have a calling in life. God gave a talent to each of us. So the only thing we have to do is just say, Jesus, use me. Here are the talents that you gave me. Let me know how you want me to use these talents throughout my life. And God will reveal it to you. And everybody has a gift. Either if you're called to be a mother, a wife, that's a big calling. And I think it's one of the biggest callings is to be a mother in your home because you're raising your children for the world. And also there's other people that have a different calling, maybe to be single and serving the Lord, or religious, either a nun or a priest, different vocations. But we are all serving for the same purpose, the kingdom of Jesus here right now. We can leave it here right now on earth. And right now in this moment is very needed. Is very needed because the world is lacking a lot of love and kindness. And we need to have kindness with each other. Kindness and love is needed. And God created us to love and to feel love as well. We are created to love one another. And Jesus always says this on his word in the Gospels. Always is talking about love. God is love. So we're here to serve and to love one another.
Ten years of sharing the peace of Christ. Shalom World, God's own channel.